Well, let's get started. Let's go over to our left. Here you'll see Navy Pier. Navy Pier was built in 1916 and was designed by Charles Frost. It was built to help beautify the harbor. The pier is 3,100 feet long and 300 feet wide. It's seen 4 major uses in its day. The pier was first used as a shipping port for freight vessels, but between the Motor Age and Great Depression it became useless and sat alone for a little bit. It was taken over during World War II and was used by the United States Navy as a training facility for aircraft carrier pilots. And it is the Navy's use of the pier that would eventually give it its official title, Navy Pier. After World War II, from 1946 to 65, the University of Illinois came in and they used the pier as their Chicago campus. In 1965, the college decided to move inside the city and the pier sat alone again. Now, it was rebuilt from the water up in the late 1980s and also underwent a major renovation last year because this is the 100th anniversary of Navy Pier. The largest and grandest addition of last year's renovation is our brand new Ferris Wheel. That Ferris Wheel, titled the Centennial Wheel, is 200 feet in diameter and was built to pay respect to the original Ferris Wheel, the one designed by George Gale Washington Ferris, a steel engineer from Pittsburgh, for the World's Fair in 1893. It may be difficult to imagine, but the very first Ferris Wheel for the World's Fair in 1893 was taller than our current one. Again, this one is 200 feet in diameter. The original was 263. The very first Ferris wheel took 1/2 hour to go around twice. This one takes you 20 minutes to go around 3 times. The very first Ferris wheel had 36 boxcars on it. By boxcars, I mean train cars, meant to hold 60 people at one time if everyone was standing. The Ferris wheel nowadays has gondolas, meant to hold 6 people at once, all of which can be seated. The very first Ferris wheel is no longer with us. It was actually torn down and rebuilt in St. Louis for the World's Fair of 1904. But after that World's Fair, the Ferris wheel lost so much profit that it was torn down and was sold for scrap steel. Now we are turning to head north, so I'd like to jump over to our right. If you look to our right, you'll see this white lighthouse with the 2 red roofs. That's the Chicago Harbor Lighthouse. Built in 1892 for the World's Fair in 1893. The lighthouse used to sit at the mouth of the river, but was moved to its current location on the breakwater in 1919. Up until 1979, someone lived out there inside the lighthouse, but in 1979, the Coast Guard mandated that all lighthouses had to be automatically operated, so the last tenant was removed. And the next thing I'd like to talk about is also on the right, but you have 2 options for it. Now, option 1 is to look ahead of us, and about our 1:30, 2 o'clock, just depending on where you're seated. The other option is going to be just behind that very large white and blue boat into the distance in a moment. And you'll see another short circular building out there in the distance as we go. Those are our water intake cribs, C-R-I-B, like a baby crib, and they are how we get our water off the liquid drink. There we go. The one at our 4 o'clock is in view now. Sorry about that delay. And now those are 2 of our 4 water intake cribs. The 4 water intake cribs collectively bring in over 24,000 gallons of water every 30 seconds. That 24,000 gallons of water per 30 seconds is sent through a massive tunnel system which runs 200 feet below the bottom of the lake, and all of that water ends up at the filtration plant on our left. The filtration plant is the brick building with the white vertical lines and the black glass top. It was done in 1964, and the building is 6 stories, 5 of which are underground. In an average day, this plant will process and filter over 600 million gallons of water. That 600 million gallons is in comparison to your average plant, which can only handle between 40,000 and 65,000 gallons of water in one day. We do 600 million on average. 1.4 billion gallons when running at capacity in a 24-hour period. The area of the city that sits behind the filtration plant and north of Navy Pier is known as Streeterville. Streeterville got its name thanks to Captain George Wellington Streeter. When Captain Streeter and his wife first came to Chicago in 1886 on their boat, they did not make it to shore. Their boat ran aground on a sandbar and they were stuck for 3 days. Once safely on dry land, Captain Streeter and his wife encouraged developers and contractors who were building along the lakefront to throw their construction debris between the shoreline and Captain Streeter's boat to build out a land bridge to the boat so he could retrieve it. And when the land bridge was all done, it totaled 180 acres in area, 180. Captain Streeter claimed the land bridge as his own, calling it Streeterville. He then declared that Streeterville was free and clear from the city and the state. He said furthermore, the rules of the city and the state did not apply to him while he was residing inside Streeterville. So as you can imagine, he broke many laws very quickly. He was finally arrested by the state of Illinois, but that wasn't until after 1900. And once in the custody of the state, the area known as Streeterville was annexed by the city. Up until 1994, Captain Streeter's descendants would fight to try and win the area back. But in 1994, the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the city and the state. Had they won their case, Captain Streeter's descendants would have gotten everything that sits south of the curve made by Lakeshore Drive, north of the river, west of the shoreline, and then east of Michigan Avenue. Michigan Avenue received its title because as it was first set, it went right along the lakefront. But let's stay on the left and we'll talk about a few buildings. Go to about our 10 o'clock, you'll see a brown brick building, has that blue cathedral-like top. Again, brown brick building with a blue cathedral-like top. That is the former American Furniture Mart. The building is now going by its address, which is 680 North Lakeshore Drive. The original address for that building, when it opened in 1924, was 666 North Lakeshore Drive, which, as you can imagine, was not a very popular address number. So shortly after all of the tenants moved in and got settled, they formed a petition to request a new address number, which they were granted. The building went from being 666 to 680 North Lakeshore Drive. Now, I promise we'll talk about some more buildings in just a second, but before we do, look to our right, look ahead of us, and as far north as we can see, you'll see a large area of trees and greenery. That is Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park is home to the Lincoln Park Zoo and Conservatory, one of the nation's first and one of the nation's 3 remaining large-scale free zoos. That park covers over 1,200 acres of area, and before it was a park, it was a cemetery. It was also a prison camp during the Civil War. But let's get back to buildings. If you go to about our 1030 now, you'll see a tall black building. It has a tapered silhouette, big black X's, and what might look like one antenna, but I promise is 2 antennae. They're just visually aligned. That is the John Hancock Building, and it's our 4th tallest. 1,127 feet tall, and even 100 stories. 343 meters if you need the metric. The building opened in 1969, and up until 2004 that building held the title as the world's fastest elevator ride, and lost the title as the world's fastest elevator ride to the current record holder, which is Taipei 101 in Taipei, Taiwan. Now we are going to turn, so we may have a little bit of a rock as we do, but I would like to use the John Hancock Building as a reference for the next 3 buildings we talk about. So after we go through this little rock, we're going behind us and on the right, and I'd like to start by looking at the John Hancock Building. And once you see John Hancock, the tall black one with the big X's, move 1 building to the right. You'll see that green, the building with the green windows and the green towers. That is 900 North Michigan Avenue, done in 1989, and it's home to the Bloomingdale's Mall. Now we're going back up to the Hancock Building, and we're taking a step to the left. You'll see a gray rectangular building, has big black windows, especially at the top floor, and that is Water Tower Place. It's a shopping center, hotel complex, and residential complex named after the Water Tower. The original Water Tower, the building it's named after, was one of the 4 that survived the fire in 1871, and Water Tower Place opened in 1976. One more building to the left, you'll see a beige building. It has a brown trapezoid-shaped top. It has those little horn-like antennas, and that is the Park Hyatt. It is 865 feet tall, and just by coincidence, it was finished after 865 days of construction. But we are now headed south, so I would like to start our first big lake break. Now these breaks on the lake will last a little while, and they're a great time to enjoy your company and to take some pictures. If you'd like to enjoy some air conditioning or some shade, you have plenty of time to go and enjoy either. We'll have this great view of the skyline on our right, a great view of the lighthouse coming up on the left, and we'll pick back up in a few minutes when we're on the south end of the shore, and then we'll talk about some more buildings. So until then, go ahead and enjoy the view in your company. If you have questions, bring those right up to the front. I'll take care of them in just a few, and we'll pick back up when we're on the south end of the shore. So go ahead and enjoy. The building opened in 1974 and was originally the Standard Oil Building. It then became the Amoco Oil Building and is now just Aon. In between ourselves and Aon, you'll see this blue glass building, about 2/3 the height of Aon, has the horizontal lines, and that is the new headquarters to Blue Cross Blue Shield. We saw their old headquarters during the river portion of the tour. Now from Aeon, we're going to move a little bit to the left. You'll see a beige rectangular building. It has a really big white antenna, even though the building itself is short. Again, short beige building with a tall white antenna. That is the Prudential Insurance Building. It opened in 1954. When that building opened, it was the tallest in the city, at 40 stories and 610 feet tall. It held onto the title as tallest in Chicago until 1969, the year the Hancock Building opened. We're moving a little bit more to the left, and you'll see a building with a silver diamond-shaped top. It sits at a slant, and that's 150 North Michigan Avenue. It's done in 1984. 150 North Michigan Ave would look familiar to anyone on board who's seen the movie Adventures in Babysitting, starring Elizabeth Shue. That building receives over a dozen features in the movie, especially during the scene where the little girl, named Sarah, while wearing the helmet of Thor, goes sliding down a building at an angle. The building she's supposed to be sliding down is 150 North Michigan Ave, and it's the most photographed building in the entire city. Now, in front of all of the downtown buildings, we have this large area of trees and greenery. This is actually 3 parks: Millennium Park, Mega Daly Park, and Grant Park. Let's start with Millennium. In front of 150 North Michigan Ave, you'll see a stainless steel concave structure sort of twisting up above the trees. That is Frank Gehry's Pritzker Pavilion, aka the band shell, and it sits at Millennium Park. Move to the east, closer to the boats, and you'll see a whole bunch of white X's sort of crisscrossing against one another. Well, that is Maggie Daly Park, the newest of the 3, named after the city's former First Lady. And go to the south, that really dark green area, that is all Grant Park. Grant Park is where we host many of our city festivals like Taste of Chicago and Lollapalooza. Lollapalooza was just last weekend. Now we'll talk more about Buckingham Fountain in Grant Park in just a few minutes, but first I'd like to hop over to our left. So if you look to our left, you'll see this building with the dome in the center of it, and that is the Adler Planetarium. The planetarium opened in 1930. It was the very first to open inside the United States, and it's not named after the architect Adler, it's named after Max Adler. He was one of the executives for Sears and Roebuck at the time. The building looks circular, but is actually 12-sided. It features a red granite base, and on each corner of the building there is a gold plaque that depicts one sign from the zodiac. Let's stay on the left, and you'll see a building with horizontal lines of blue and green glass and those columns on the very front of it. That's Soldier Field. Soldier Field was first done in 1924, but was remodeled to its current design in 2003. The stadium is still home to the Chicago Bears football team, and now at our 9 o'clock you'll see that white building with the big sweep of green glass windows. It has that little green baby pyramid on its roof. That's the John G. Shedd Oceanarium and Aquarium. The aquarium portion of the building was done in 1929. The oceanarium was added onto it in 1992, and it's the second largest oceanarium and aquarium inside the United States in terms of number of species. Now go to about our 8 o'clock, you'll see a white Parthenon-like building, and that is the Field Museum of Natural History. The Field Museum opened in 1921 and was named Field after Marshall Field. He put up the original $1 million to fund the museum. That museum's collection of artifacts is so extensive that at any given time they can only display 1% of their artifacts. It's also home to Sue, the world's largest unearthed and most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex. We're going to go straight to the left at our 9 o'clock. You'll see that collection of white amongst the trees. That is Buckingham Fountain. Buckingham Fountain was installed in 1927 and would look familiar to anyone on board who used to watch Married with Children. It was featured at the very beginning of the show. That fountain, when it is on, does go off on the hour every hour with a 140-foot spray of water straight up into the air. It was modeled after the fountain of the Palace of Versailles, and it's named in honor of Clarence Buckingham. The fountain was given as a gift from his sister Kate in honor of her brother Clarence. One more thing as we head north, it's at our 9 o'clock. It's that tall black building with the step-like appearance and those 2 giant white antennae. That's the former Sears Tower. Remember, the new name's the Willis Tower, but you can call it whatever you want and they'll know what you're talking about. Just remember, it's the tallest building in the city at 1,450 feet tall, 110 stories, and 442 meters. The height in feet and meters that I just gave you does not include the 2 antennae. They bring the building all the way up to 1,730 feet tall, or 527 meters. The Willis Tower opened in 1974, and from 1974 till 1998, it was the tallest on the planet. It is currently the 10th tallest. Number 1 building on the planet right now is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. and that building stands at 2,716 feet tall. That is 163 stories and 828 meters. But we are headed back towards the lock, so it's time to start big lake break number 2.